Greetings. My name is Atima Nada George. Today is Friday, June 21st, 2024. I'm a Green Fellow with the American Folklife Center of the Library of Congress, and I'm delighted to invite Ramona Harper to participate in Playing the Angel's Game, exploring the perspectives of Black Foreign Service women. Ramona, welcome.
Good
I'd like to,
morning.
I'd like to ask you to tell us your origin story, please.
Well, by origin story, I'm trying to interpret what you mean by origin story. So that's a conversation in
Where were you
itself.
born? Where'd you grow up? Go to school? Sort of
Okay.
some of the highlights.
Okay. I
Mhm.
was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I went to Catholic school all my life. So I was in Catholic school, actually taught by nuns from the first grade to 12th grade. And after I graduated college, high school, actually it was John W. Hallahan High School. And I have to put that in there because Hallahan High School was the very first Catholic girls' high school in the United States. So that's just for the historical record. When I was about in my junior year, I wanted to start a magazine. I saw that as my life's purpose. At 16, about 16, I wanted to start a magazine for Black women. And my reasoning was I was into fashion and hair and makeup and that type of thing. And I read the major magazines at the time for teens, 17, Teenagers Ingenue were two of the magazines. I knew all the names of the top models. Of course, they were all white. I saw no women of color, nobody who looked like me in those magazines. And even when I was 16 years old, I realized that there's something wrong with this. Where these images, how are we as a Black girls and Black women, where's our self-esteem, where's our sense of beauty coming from if we never see ourselves? And so when I was about 16, I said, well, that's what I want to do when I finish high school. I want to go to college and learn how to create a magazine. Not being given adequate guidance either at home or at school, I thought the way to start a magazine was to study fashion. So my idea was to create a fashion magazine, but a magazine that also dealt with issues of importance to Black women and girls. So what did I do? I got scholarship and went to Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York. Pratt is known for its art school, its school of architecture, but also has a school of professional studies where you can major in fashion design or fashion merchandising. I majored in fashion merchandising at Pratt Institute for my freshman year with the intention of eventually creating a magazine specifically for Black women. After a year at Pratt, I realized this is not a major that will ever help me learn how to start a magazine. I still didn't know how to start a magazine. I left Brooklyn, New York, came back home to Philadelphia, and I finished a degree in social work at Temple University. So I just completely, plus I didn't like the people in the fashion industry. I felt they were superficial and it was an eye opener. And so I didn't do it. I didn't realize my life's dream of what I wanted to do with my life. So there was that feeling that, you didn't do what you started out to do. I tell the story when I have spoken before audiences about the Foreign Service because it's a true story. One day I was reading about 1982, I was reading Essence magazine. And when I saw Essence magazine for the very first time, I said, that was it. That was the vision I had as a 16-year-old in high school, because there were no magazines for Black women. There was Ebony and Jet. Okay. Jet would have the swimsuit model of the month. And we know Ebony magazine started by John Johnson. They were not specifically for Black women. Essence magazine was. And I said, that's what I saw and did not know how to create. One month I'm reading Essence magazine, and there is a recruiting ad that the State Department had placed in Essence magazine, and it said, see the world, join the Foreign Service. Now, I had done some traveling. I had done some traveling, and on the side, I worked as a professional model for about 7 years doing runway, mostly live fashion shows. So I modeled in Europe. I modeled for Valentino. I modeled in Italy. And I liked being overseas. I liked that exposed me to international living, modeling as a sideline. So I saw this See the World, Join the Foreign Service in Essence magazine, a little coupon. I clipped it out, wrote my name on it, mailed it into the State Department. I'd never heard of the Foreign Service. I'd never considered, I never heard of the career. I don't know anybody in it. But when I saw the See the World part, I said, oh, maybe this is a way for me to have a real career. Because modeling for me was always my moonlight, fun, money fantasy. You know, I was never serious. I always had real professional jobs. It's my sideline. So what? I get this big packet from the State Department with all this information about the Foreign Service that I'd never heard of in my life. I said, this is it. This is what I want to do. And at that time, of course, the United States Information Agency was separate from the state U.S. Department of State, but the entry process was the same. It was the same test, the same oral exam, everything was the same, but you made a choice when you applied if you wanted to go to USIA or if you wanted to go to the State Department. And USI was right up my alley because I was always into the performing arts. At that time, I was working at Miami-Dade Community College as a teacher and an advisor. So that was my profession at the time. I was working at Miami-Dade Community College as an academic advisor, and I taught a course on careers. That was my real job. I said, this is it. It just, USI brings together all of my interests, education, international exchanges, the performing art, the arts. And so what did I do? I started studying. Oh, I went to the library and learned, well, what is the Foreign Service? I learned everything I could about the Foreign Service. And then I started studying for the exam. I gave myself 3 months. I'd come home from work at the college. They had study guides, books. ARCO had a series, old series, ARCO, all the study guides like GRE, GMAT, LSAT. They had FSOT. I studied for 3 solid months at the end of my workday, timing myself, looking over where I was weak, where did I need to brush up on my history? Was it economic, basic economic? Where was it that I was weakest? And I studied for 3 solid months, took the exam. I was living in Miami at the time. At the University of Miami, I took the Foreign Service Officer exam. Make a long story short, I passed, went to Washington, did my oral assessment, passed, and here I am, a Foreign Service officer. So that's my story. And when I tell that story, I've told young people, if you have a dream, don't give up on the dream, because the universe has a way of making your dream come true. And it might not be exactly in the path that you think it's going to be, but don't lose the dream. In my wildest dream, I never thought of myself as being a career diplomat. I'd never heard of a Foreign Service officer. But I was drawn to international travel. I was drawn to the idea of me contributing to international understanding and world peace. That motivated me greatly, not just to travel, but the public service and being some type of an instrument to bring peace to the world. I said, this is it. This is the career for me. It brings everything together. So that's my background. And I stayed in the Foreign Service, United States Information Agency. Of course, that's where I went. My overseas assignments were Dakar, Senegal, my first assignment. Then I went to Harare, Zimbabwe, as the cultural affairs officer. East Africa, I was the public affairs officer in Kampala, Uganda. Went to Panama, so I'm out of Africa now. Went to Latin America. I was a cultural affairs officer in Panama, and I was the branch public affairs officer, my last assignment, in Frankfurt, Germany. So I have studied French, Spanish, and German, and achieved the three level, which is in reading and speaking in those languages. So those were my languages. Stayed in the Foreign Service for 21 years. And when I had the years and the age, I decided that I didn't want to travel anymore. I always loved the work, I never tired of public diplomacy. I used to tell people I had the best job in the world and I loved what I did. But at a certain point in time, you do get tired of moving. And I wanted to get more grounded. And so I had the time of the years. And when I left the Foreign Service, I had achieved senior Foreign Service. So I made counselor in the Foreign Service. I jumped over that threshold from being the FS1 to being in the senior Foreign Service. And so,
Congratulations.
mhm.
Ramona, I'd like you to talk in greater depth about the nature of public diplomacy work, what a cultural affairs officer does, the exchanges, the arts, and so on. What really grabbed your attention and made it such a rewarding career for you?
Well, it brought together so many things that were important to me in terms of my values and what I was looking for in a career. Cultural affairs officer, you are working with international exchange programs. For example, the International Visitor Leadership Program, which has been around for many, many years. You are working with the Fulbright program. Many people have heard of the Fulbright academic exchanges of scholars and students. You would manage those programs. You would work with the academics coming to a country, and you would help to select those students and researchers going to the United States on the Fulbright program. In the arts, I had wonderful times bringing the best of American visual and performing arts to my country of assignment. And I would mount art exhibitions. I would mount theater presentations. I would put on speaker programs where we got into various issues of mutual concern. And I think what's so important to understand in public diplomacy is a form of international public relations. And in public relations, we're talking about activities of mutual benefit. This is key, mutual benefit. This is not just, done correctly, public diplomacy is not just about what the United States is getting out of it in terms of our national interests. It's about what we are also bringing in communication with our host country so that there's mutual benefit. They're also benefiting from our relationship. So, there are many challenges there because you have to understand the culture of the people. You can't reach the people in that country of assignment unless you have some understanding of the culture of the people, how to work with the people. The job was always a challenge. When I left the Foreign Service, I came back to the State Department. I worked 8 more years as a recruiter. And so, yeah, I had 8 more years recruiting for the State Department. And so it's important to understand the nature of the work, but it's about mutual benefit. And it's a two-way communication with our host countries. But it was always a challenge. I've told audiences that public diplomacy was a job where I never felt I got it. I never felt that, oh, I got this. No, yeah, I don't have this because there may be a language that you're still trying to perfect, which is never perfect. You are still trying to understand the history of the people and their economic policy. You're trying to understand their policies. You're trying to understand American policies. We have to know what our policies are. We need to stay up on that. And it changes from country to country, just like the language could change. So it's a job that I felt was always a challenge, always helped me to continue to grow because no, I never had it. You never have it. As soon as you think you have it, you're off to the next assignment and you're starting all over again. So I don't know if that answers some of the questions about the work, what we do, and why I was drawn to it.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit more about your work as a recruiter for the U.S. Department of State.
So after I retired, I went back as the terminology was WAE, and I think they've changed that terminology, but these are former Foreign Service officers who come back as annuitants. So we can only work so many hours in a year because otherwise it would affect your pension. You don't work full time, but you work so many hours of a week. I typically used to work maybe 3 days a week. And we worked in the Bureau of Human Resources, so it's an HR assignment. We worked closely with a program called Diplomats in Residence. Our diplomats in residence are Foreign Service officers who take positions mostly at universities around the country. So we have a regional breadth and reach in trying to recruit new people into the Foreign Service. The recruiting officers work closely with a DIR. So we had regional responsibilities. I mostly covered Washington, D.C., but I did have the opportunity to support DIRs and fill in around the country. We did information briefings on how to pass the Foreign Service Officer test, about the test. We did briefings on the oral assessment and that whole process of becoming how do you become a Foreign Service Officer? So we did a lot of briefings and information sessions on becoming a Foreign Service Officer. We also did many career fairs, many career fairs. So universities would have career day and big auditoriums or gymnasiums where you have many employers. U.S. Department of State would be an employer at a job fair amongst many other employers. And so we would talk to many students, give out materials that we would have about how do you become a Foreign Service Officer. So in generally those were the tasks that we did in trying to recruit. And of course, our objectives were based on strategic planning. And the strategic planning always had certain percentages that we're trying to reach in terms of increasing minority representation. So we're not just out there talking to people. We are really with objectives in mind of percentages of what we're trying to increase our diversity in the Foreign Service. That was always key to keep in mind.
Yes, I recall that the Foreign Service Act of 1980 has a passage that requires a foreign service that is truly representative of the American people and all of our diversity. And so that is enshrined in our law.
We haven't achieved it yet, but we're still working on it. I think the Foreign Service, at last I checked, was, I believe, 6% in terms of African Americans. And you know, we are more than that in the United States. So
tell me your first assignment in Senegal. What struck you as unique or interesting or important about that assignment?
well, the first assignment at that time, we used to be called a junior officer trainee. So, I mean, that tells you right where you are on the totem pole, a junior officer trainee. And I remember I worked mostly with the cultural affairs officer in Dakar, and she was just wonderful. First of all, you've got the language. If you've never had a job before where you had to work in another language, I mean, that's a challenge right there. And of course, Senegal is French. So working in French, that's something you're always working on to be able to communicate effectively in the language of the country. So that stands out, first of all. And in Senegal, the ambassador did not want anybody coming to post who had not achieved a 3+. And those listening to this video might not understand the rating. It's important to understand that 0 means you have no capacity of the language. 5 means you have native capacity. In world languages, we typically have to get a 3 in reading and speaking. We don't test writing. Well, Senegal, the ambassador wanted anybody coming to his post had to have a 3+, which is a higher rating from the Foreign Service Institute that tests. So the language, working in another language, most of us United States in our jobs, we don't work in other languages. So the language is always interesting. And just understanding African culture. So you've got to understand the culture of the people. Otherwise, you cannot communicate well with them. We do certain things the way we do them in the United States. And I think we go abroad thinking, well, everybody does things the same way. No, they don't. They have a different sense of time, a different sense of rhythm, they have a different sense of where they stand. And either they stand close to you, do they stand farther away from these little things you wouldn't even think about, just where people place their bodies. It's like if you're not aware of that, your communication is affected. So learning African culture or whatever culture of the country of assignment, that's key. And you're always learning. So your antenna have to be out. So you have become aware, the awareness, where am I? This is not where I've been. So where am I? Help me to understand where I am. I think that's it. And then some of the programs that they did, this was a long time ago, but I remember they used to do an American Studies conference. And I was just impressed by the depth of intellectual pursuits that we were involved with in foreign countries. We really get into issues and topics of great intelligence and lend themselves to great research. And the Africans are certainly as educated and contributing to the literature as we are. So, you know, it was an eye-opening experience to how other people live.
Ramona, one of the things that I really valued during my career was inviting family and friends to visit me when I was assigned abroad. Can you share any experiences of friends and family visiting with you?
Well, I think you were lucky. I never had anybody visit me ever.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
That never happened.
Hmm. Well, if maybe we could pivot now and talk about your interests, um, the thing that really spoke to you in the other assignments, whether that was Zimbabwe or when you were in Panama, and the issues that really spoke to your heart.
Well, I'll speak in general about issues. What my approach in going to a country of assignment is, first of all, of course, I need to know what were the issues at the United States, what were our issues that we were promoting, what were our mission objectives. Of course, you've got to know that mission program plan. I don't know if they still call it, but it was the mission program plan. So that's the writ large. You've got to understand what is the United States mission in this country and where does public diplomacy fit in. That's basic. Once I get past that, what I always look for was, where are the gaps? Where are the gaps in terms of our reaching our mission objectives? Where are the gaps in terms of the host country having their needs met on issues? So I look for the gaps. And where there were gaps, that's where I would come up with new ideas for programs. I think what got me promoted, because I literally was promoted every time I came up for promotion. And in the Foreign Service, I mean, those hearing this may not understand, but we come up after so many years, then you are eligible to be promoted to the next level. After so many 2-3 years, you are eligible to be promoted to the next level. I got promoted every time I came up for promotion until the senior Foreign Service. And I think it was because I was always looking for, where were needs not being met in terms of meeting our mission objectives and working with the host country. And then I'd come up with creative programs. I wouldn't just wait on Washington to give me the idea for the program. I suggested so many programs to Washington, D.C. And at that time, if they were good ideas, they would fund it. So I would get a lot of extra money into the public diplomacy budget. You had a budget, but I came up with new ideas. So I would get more money for programs that were not thought about. And that, I think, was the secret to working well in the country. Great satisfaction, personal satisfaction that I've created something different. And it resulted in me being promoted. So it was valued. It was valued by the United States Information Agency. It was very much my approach in the country. Give you a quick example before we can move on. When I was in Panama, I came to Panama in 1992 and left in 95. 92, my assignment began right after the United States had the Just Cause invasion, and we deposed Manuel Noriega. So Noriega was taken out of office, and the United States could go in with a new version of democracy for the Panamanians. Well, years before, there had been a binational center. A binational center is a cultural center where there are programs mostly centered around learning and teaching English between the two host countries. Under Noriega, no more binational center between the United States and Panama. Closed. Okay, there's no more Noriega here, right? I see the gap. I see, where's the gap? I want to restart a binational center in Panama. And it took me my whole 3-year assignment. But by the time I left Panama, there was a physical building, a board of directors. There were teachers, and I'm not giving you all of the details of where all these resources came from, because it took many resources to get building people, teachers. There was El Centro Cultural Panameño Estadounidense. There was a binational center in Panama, physical building that was a BNC. So that was my approach to working. Where's the need? Where's the gap? How can we communicate better? How can we reach mission program objectives better and for mutual benefit? It's the same approach in every country. So I'm speaking with a big idea, but it's the same idea in every country that I work for. Where's the gap? Where can I bring some new programming in that perhaps Washington had not thought about?
In 1999, the Clinton-Gore administration launched their Reinventing Government, and the U.S. Information Agency was incorporated back into the State Department under this reorganization. How, if at all, did that impact you in your practice of public diplomacy?
Quite frankly, I retired and resigned from the department as a result of that merger. And I had already made foreign service. I had made senior foreign service. Matter of fact, I was promoted into the foreign service after the merger. I never thought that would happen because I didn't think the State Department appreciated public diplomacy. I became counselor after the integration. So I thought it was a mistake. I was one of those USI, a Foreign Service officer who felt that we should have never folded into the State Department. I felt that we all had work to do as part of the mission, but public diplomacy needed to maintain its objectivity to have credibility. We're dealing with information, and information that does not need to be tainted with propaganda, which has a negative pejorative meaning. And so it needed to be a separate agency to maintain that objectivity. We're dealing with journalism. I mean, journalism is at the heart of, and information is at the heart of what we do in public diplomacy. How can you do that within a department that is totally focused on creating policy? And we had different functions that were mutual in terms of the final outcome, but they were different. And I didn't feel that the merger was the best decision in terms of the kind of work that public diplomacy does, and the need to maintain our objectivity. Different cultures. There are different cultures. USI was a small agency, but I think we had maybe 2,500 Foreign Service officers. I'm not talking about the civil service now, just the Foreign Service. State Department at that time might have had 8,000. In comparison, they were just two different agencies with different objectives, mutually supportive. But the size affected the culture. And you put two cultures together, it's like oil and water. You know, you're trying to make something blend. And it just was not a place I wanted to be. Even so, I made senior foreign service in 2003. and I resigned, I retired in 2006. I lasted 3 years at the senior foreign service level. I think had I remained in USIA, I would not have retired. But because I was put into this other department agency that at the beginning really did not understand what we did. In the beginning, I think things have improved. My sense is that things have greatly improved since 1999. It's a long time ago, long time ago. But at that time, I think the State Department did not fully understand or appreciate what we did. You know, there was a bit of an arrogance that they were somehow better, though you got into the Foreign Service the exact same way, same test, same everything. So we just had different parts of the work that we did in terms of representing the United States. So no, I retired because the culture was so different. And again, this is the beginning. This is the beginning of the merger. This is not years later. The culture was so different. I felt that I didn't know the culture of the State Department. And there was no concerted effort to really teach us. You had to find out where you are. I think the State Department probably was the most foreign of all foreign countries I had served in, quite frankly. It was foreign. And
Wow.
so I didn't want to stay because that merger, they were hard times. And I'm sure things are much, much better now. But I specifically remember the day a person that I was working with told me, well, USIA Foreign Service Officer, you are not a real Foreign Service Officer. That is a quote. You are not a real Foreign Service officer. Because in their mind, the political officer, the political and the economics, that's the work of a Foreign Service officer. But the work we were doing, increasing international understanding, the whole communication piece, mass media, international exchanges, hearts and minds, the work we did, they didn't see as real Foreign Service work. I don't know what they saw, but I was told that you are not a real Foreign Service officer. That did not inspire me to continue to want to be in the State Department.
I wanted to ask you if you care to comment about the interagency process. Our missions, our embassies abroad are staffed by several different agencies, whether it's commerce or justice or state, and the Agency for International Development, and there's what they call the interagency process. Any comments on that about opportunities to serve or the ways in which the different interests of the US government and the American people are represented abroad?
Well, I'm speaking generally, writ large from the big idea. And at a US embassy, there is the mission. So in terms of interagency, there are various agencies that are part of this mission. And each one has their own specific piece of the mission, piece of the objectives, their piece of how are we achieving US national interest in that country. And we all have our piece of the pie. So that writ large for anyone hearing this is the interagency. It's a mission, and we all have a specific role to play in reaching the objectives of the missions. And so there can be various agencies, each doing their own part of the mission. And I'm assuming that they still work this way. We'd have weekly meetings where the agencies would all come together around the same table so that we know what everybody else is doing. We might not be doing what the FAA is doing, right? Because they have their work to do. But as a public diplomacy officer, I might be doing a program, a speaker program on what they're doing. You see what I'm saying? So yes, it's a mission overseas, and in the interagencies, the various agencies have their own work to do, but we all work together towards the same aim, headed by the ambassador. That's how it works overseas. That's how it works overseas. And in Washington, it's a big it's a big program. It's the interagency is massive. It's massive because you've got all these agencies that are headquartered in Washington, D.C. And so it is quite complex. The interagency in Washington is, as you can imagine, feels much more complex than working in your mission at an agency, specific country objectives. The interagency is a massive tentacles between the various agencies trying to communicate and trying to reach the same objectives, but it's massive because it's Washington.
Ramona, we're wrapping up, but I wanted to give you an opportunity, if you'd like, to speak to those who will be accessing this recording in the future about the Foreign Service or prospects about careers as a diplomat. We welcome your thoughts.
Well, for those who would be interested in becoming a Foreign Service officer, the Foreign Service, first of all, is a career where you will more than likely not get in right when you finish school. So we need to understand this. They're looking for people who have had some significant life experience. The median age for a Foreign Service officer is about 31. So that's important to know if this is a career that you're thinking about. You need to get ahead of the game then, because more than likely you are not going to get in at the age of 21, graduating from college. But if this is something that you want to do, when I talk to audiences, even high school kids, about working in international affairs as a diplomat, I speak of big ideas, the big things that you need to do. Number one, you need to read. Wide reading is essential if you are going to get into the Foreign Service, because remember, you've got to pass the test. You're not going to become a Foreign Service officer if you don't pass the test. So that's the first hurdle. How are you passing this exam? We forget the career. You got to pass an exam to get in this career. And the way you do it, it is a lifelong process of reading, exposing yourself to current events, knowing what's going on in the world. So that's the beginning. You don't have to major in international affairs. I can't tell you how many students I've talked to think you've got to major in international affairs. No, you don't. The Foreign Service is looking for people who are broadly well educated. They are looking for generalists. So when we talk about generalists, we're talking about people who are able to do many things because they have a solid background of being educated. It's important to be able to write well. So I'm talking to a younger audience right now. You've got to be able to write. If you can't write, you will not survive the Foreign Service. You simply will not. And how do you become a better writer? You become a better writer by reading more. You see the connection between the two. So I'm really talking to young people now about preparing for a career in diplomacy. As you go forward, then what do you do with your time out of school? It would be helpful to do meaningful kinds of things that show that you really have an interest that dovetail with the work of international affairs. And that can be anything. But having activities that you can say, these are some things that I did along the way. You have something to show that show your real interest in world affairs. And it does not have to be a specific major. You can do that in many ways. So those are a couple of basics for young people. I would say there are certain characteristics that you need to have. Let me put a plug in for careers.state.gov, careers.state.gov, because there is a wealth of information. I can't tell you all the information about the Foreign Service. I'm just scratching the surface here, but careers.state.gov really has a wealth of information about the Foreign Service, the test. One important thing you need to understand is that the oral assessment and the 13 dimensions. What are the qualities that we're looking for in a Foreign Service officer? When we do the oral assessment, which is well, it had been in person. I think they're doing that by online too. There are certain characteristics that the State Department is looking for in potential Foreign Service officers, and they call them the 13 dimensions. Find out what those 13 dimensions are and see if that's you. See if you possess those qualities, because they're qualities. Now you have to be educated and intelligent to pass the written part, but on the oral part and the other assessments that they do, they're looking at qualities. It's not just being smart. What are the qualities that you bring? Good judgment. Good judgment is so important. Being able to think on your feet, being able to get along with people, being flexible. I mean, these are qualities that you need to succeed in this career. And so get the basic understanding of how to get in. You need to know something about the test when it's given. You need to do some brush up for the test. I don't think you can study for the Foreign Service Officer test, but you can definitely brush up on what you've already learned. You can brush up, you can review, and understand how to get in, and then look at what you are doing to present the picture of yourself that shows that you are truly interested in public service, and you're interested in international affairs and serving your country. What am I doing that I will be able to eventually present this? This is who I am, and this is what I've done, and I'm here to become a representative of the United States government.
Thank you so very much. We truly appreciate the time and the thought that you've put into this interview.
Well, thanks for this opportunity. Thank you, and good luck on your project.
Thank you.